You're listening to the Nothing But Good podcast, a show that believes you should know where your food comes from, or more specifically, who it comes from. Each week, we bring you new interviews with the makers and founders of the brands you love so you can see how they came to be and what makes them different. We focus on telling the stories of emerging brands and brands who are committed to using better for you ingredients in the snacks they create. Every episode of the Nothing But Good podcast is brought to you by O Goodie Box, a snack box subscription service that sends healthier snacks directly to your home or office so that you have the fuel you need to make your greatest impact each day. Order your first box at ogoodiebox.com and use code PODCAST for 15% off your first order. That's OGoodie, OHGOODIE box.com and code PODCAST for 15% off your first order. Now grab a snack and let's get to today's show. Well, great. Well, Nancy, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show. Would you mind introducing yourself and Rule Breaker Snacks?
Of course. First of all, thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. I'm delighted to be here. I am Nancy Kalish, the founder and CEO of Rule Breaker Snacks. We're based in Brooklyn, New York, and we make vegan, top 11 allergen-free brownies, blondies, bites.
I love it. They are so good. I am mildly addicted to the brownie bite. I'm just like, me and my husband fight over. I was like, that's not yours. You can't just help yourself to a brownie bite whenever you want. So
I love to hear that. It never gets old, believe me.
Well, good. Well, how long has Rule Breaker been around and what kind of got you started in all of this?
Yeah, well, so back in 2015, I was a health journalist. I wrote for lots of the women's magazines like Real Simple, Prevention, Glamour, Self, all of those, a little bit for the New York Times. And I interviewed hundreds of doctors, nutritionists, dietitians, knew exactly what to eat to be healthy, and have always had a terrible, terrible sweet tooth, which really just collided constantly with what, with my aspirations to eat better. And of course, I really wanted to eat better, but, and I would go into the health food store and I would buy up a whole bunch of things, little treats. I'm lucky enough, I live right across the street in Brooklyn from an amazing health food store. So I would go in there and new things would catch my eye and I'd buy up maybe, sweets are worth it. So I was spending like $20, $30 at a time. And then I'd tear them open in anticipation and they just didn't do it for me. They tasted too healthy. To be honest, they also looked really healthy, like both the treat itself and the packaging would be like this brown paper bag type of packaging.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel satisfied. So totally not for anybody else except for me and my family and my friends. I started experimenting. I've always loved to bake. Brownies are my absolute favorite thing ever. And I had read a lot about people making brownies out of beans on the internet. So I looked up some recipes and I thought, okay, I'll try these. Beans are really healthy, so I bet this is going to be terrific, And I tried them and they were awful. They were really bad. They tasted like beans. They smelled like beans. I mean, they were bad, but they had a really great texture. And so again, just for myself, I thought, hey, I'm going to work on this. I don't mind. This is a great hobby for me. And so I kept on working on it for about a year, trying to come up with a better recipe that would have the beans in there and have that great texture, but not taste anything like beans. It took me about a year, and I did come up with a great recipe. I ate a lot of bad brownies, and my husband and daughter are saints because they also tried a lot of bad stuff. But after a year, I had a really, really amazing recipe. And everybody started saying to me, oh, these are so good, you should sell them. And I'm like, I was getting a little tired of being a journalist. And I said to myself, oh, hi, how hard could it be to start a food company? I'll try it. And I really found out how hard. But this was back in 2015. In January 2015, there was a natural products trade show, one of the big ones coming up that September. I took a leap of faith. I booked a booth and thought, oh, we'll get ready, no problem. And it took the full time from January to September to get everything ready. In fact, we were so down to the wire that we actually had to FedEx samples down to Baltimore, which is where this trade show was, in order to make the opening of the show. But we got our first orders and then we were in business. So that's how it all started.
Gosh, I love that story, and I love just like the huge leap of faith. And I think it's so just very honest to be like, it is hard, and yeah, it took all 9 months, and it still like barely happened.
It did. Things always, it's like that Murphy's Law. Things, especially the food business, really. There's a special Murphy's Law in the food business. And that means that, everything will take longer and than you ever thought. And anything that can go wrong will go wrong, basically. That's how it goes. But it's so funny. I never expected, it is really hard. The food business is really hard. However, I have to say, I wake up every morning, so happy and energized and interested in what I'm doing and can't wait to get to my desk. And frankly, I did feel that way when I was a journalist and I was writing an interesting article, but now I feel that way like every day. It's great.
Oh, I love that so much. That's so good. Do you miss journalism at all, or are you?
Every once in a while, I like to flex my writing muscles a little bit so I get some chances. It was, but they're very similar in one way, which is, first of all, I have to keep up for my business because we are a better for you, healthy brand. I have to keep up on everything, and I use my journalism skills to do things like really do a deep dive into every ingredient that is in our products. So there are a lot of ingredients where they have sub-ingredients that you don't necessarily have to list on the label. And you have to be really careful. And I take it very seriously because, I was an avid label reader before I got into this as a consumer and a journalist. And I know a lot of people are counting on me. So like when for instance, natural flavors, so we have natural flavors in our products, and they actually are natural and made from plants. However, you can also have natural flavors that have something called propylene glycol in them, which is a chemical that's actually found in rocket fuel.
What?
And you don't have to put it on the label. So, I'm not doing that to people. So I go into the spec sheets on each ingredient that we buy. I look at all the sub ingredients. I pay more, believe it or not, to have a flavor that doesn't have rocket fuel in it. You have to pay extra. But we do that.
Wow.
I know, right?
Crazy.
So you have to be careful, honestly. You have to have, you really, and I take my, guardianship of our customers
I love that.
very seriously. Same thing with with our bakeries. It's easy to say that you're gluten-free or nut-free. And if you're not reading the label carefully, when you, those products could be made in a facility where they're stored right next to, stuff with nuts. And now the truth is that those brands are probably super careful, but I wanted to go the extra distance and make sure that we were made in a allergen-free, we're made in a vegan, allergen-free, kosher certified,
Wow.
everything that's on our label. Our bakeries are those things. And that was actually pretty hard to find bakeries that fit all of our requirements.
I was gonna say, especially because you said you're free of like the top 11 allergens,
Yeah.
right? So I would imagine if you wanted one that was just like a gluten-free facility, maybe still tricky to find, but not as tricky. When you're dealing with three that you're like, absolutely not, that seems like very difficult to
Yeah,
find.
we don't even have coconut or sesame. It's like, soy and dairy and eggs and gluten, and I mean the list goes on and on and on. So, and every ingredient has to also come from a supplier that's also where it's also free of all of those things. So it
Wow.
goes all the way down the line, but like I said, and that's kind of where the journalism thing comes in, because I was an investigative reporter, so I'm very good at drilling down and getting to the bottom of things. And I'm like a pit bull. And you know what that's like. I will
I do.
literally, dig and dig and dig and dig till I get to the bottom, and I can feel, rest assured, that everything that I'm, putting in people's mouths is actually good for them.
God, I love that. And I will say on the natural flavor side of things, or like the ingredient reading kind of things with Oh Goody, now we're like really looking to find only products that are paying attention to the labels, that care about their ingredients. But that
Yeah.
is something pretty new to me still. I grew up in the vending world. It was very normal just to have like Reese's and Coke and Frida and not think about it. It was just food and it was snacks and it was right
Me
there.
too.
And now I'm like, oh my God. So, but when you see like natural flavor on an ingredient list, how do you know? Like, how do you get to find out if I wanted to be like an investigative journalist on it? Like, how would I find out what actual natural flavor means for that product?
Well, so I would say there's two steps depending upon how industrious you want to be. The first is, if you look at the rest of the ingredients label and they're all recognizable, good ingredients, with integrity, they're made from things you can recognize. Chances are, especially that chances are that it's okay, that it's really made. They just are not saying, they don't want to say that they'd use this combination of four different flavors to get the specific flavor profile that is in their product. So they don't want to
Got
let
it.
that out because it's proprietary information.
I
So if
see.
you look at the label in general and you can feel good about the other ingredients, chances are that the natural flavors are good too. However, really, if you really want to know, you have to reach out to the brand. I mean, I get ingredients questions from customers all the time. People have
Yeah.
all kinds of crazy allergies, and they want to know if our facility is made in the same facility where something with tomato is, or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's like really, like, you have to be prepared, and a brand should want to answer those questions for you and should get
Mm-hmm.
right back to you. So that's my answer. I hope that helps. And they should be able
That's
to
really
tell you.
helpful.
Okay.
No, that's really helpful. And then, God, you think like so many aspects of a business, or you think you might know like what goes into something, but like never in a million years would I think that someone would be emailing you to ask if like the brownies are made in a facility with tomatoes. Like
Yeah.
you don't know. And I love these type of conversations. Even something as silly as yesterday I was at a coffee shop that I love to go to, and I love this little hand pie that they make, which is not gluten free. It's all of the bad things,
Okay.
but it's stuffed with curd and it's so good. And
Mhm.
you just think, oh wow, $5 is kind of a lot, but it's good. I'm gonna get it. And then I was sitting at the counter, and it's like an open kitchen, so I could see the barista I was talking to, and he was working and stirring. And it's like, what are you doing? And he was stirring for like over an hour as I was working on these reports. He was like, "Oh, I'm making the curd for the hand pies." I was like, "What?" Like, what do you mean you're making that curd for the hand? Like, that was how long are you going to be here? And he was pretty much like, as long as it takes. And
He's
it's like,
very
you just,
dedicated.
yeah, and so you don't think about all of the things that go into the end result. And so it is nice to
Yeah.
know that someone out there actually cares about all of those things and isn't taking it as a nuisance that someone would email and ask that. You're like, no, I take a great pride and responsibility in getting you that information. So that's
I
actually reassuring.
absolutely, and I think that's truer of smaller brands as well. Meaning like we're really like someone like me or my equivalent at other small brands. They know every the origin of every ingredient. What's this made from? What's your where are your if you have oats, are they grown in fields that are adjacent to gluten? Like, you
Oh my
need to know
gosh.
that stuff to know if there's any possibility of cross contamination and what your certifications are. And yeah,
Gosh.
it's a lot, but it's good, and I feel good because I feel like our customers are putting an enormous amount of trust in
Mhm.
us to be transparent, and this is something that I can deliver on that maybe a bigger brand can't that easily.
100%. And who wouldn't want to, because they don't want you to know what's in the product. So, uh, um, well, how then do you make these brownie bites, these blondies taste so good when they have none of the things that I would normally associate with goodness inside of them? Because they really are like addictively good. So, like, what's not like the secret, but what's like the generic secret that you can share?
Well, so one thing is, we worked a really, really long time on it.
Yeah.
Chickpeas, which is our first ingredient in all our products, are really hard to deal with. Not as hard as black beans, which is what I started with. Black beans. If you're going to make your own bean brownies, guys, make them with chickpeas. Do not make them with black beans. Black beans are way too beany. But what we did was we that was a whole journey in finding a grower of chickpeas that would then grind them up according to our specifications, and we roast them a certain way to cut down on the bitterness. All the bitter oils
Hmm.
disappear, and a kind of a nuttiness, not for nuts, but a nuttiness comes in. And we had to work with that, as well as, frankly, some of the natural flavors, rocket fuel free, that we had, that all work together to, so you've got a chickpea centric product that does not taste anything like a chickpea. And then we keep it chewy. One of our ways that we actually keep our sugar count way down below our competitors and keep the product um, shelf stable, which basically means fresh in the store for many months without any preservatives, is date paste. Date
Hmm.
paste is a wonderful, wonderful sweetener, and it gives a lot of texture and chewiness to our brownies. So we're able to do something that's soft baked and also remains fresh. It's really it's really a terrific win-win situation. Now that I cracked the code, which took a long time, now we really know how to make all kinds of flavors, and so it's gotten a lot easier.
I love that. Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah, because when you think of chickpea, you think of like a savory snack. I don't normally think of. I've had enough of your brownies to know that there's chickpeas. That's the first ingredient, but it's not what I would have normally associated with a brownie. But it's so good, and you do have that
Thank you.
chewiness. I just love them. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you about as you're growing the business, I did see that you were on Shark Tank. So it's a pretty
Yeah.
big pivot question here, but I wanted to ask you before I let you go, what was it like? It's like my favorite show. I am so in awe that you were brave enough to go do it. Was it fun? Was it terrifying? Did it increase sales? All of the things.
Well, it was fun and terrifying both.
Yeah.
Um, so the Well, first of all, it takes people don't know this, but it takes about a year to get on.
No way.
It's harder to get on Shark Tank than it was to get into college. You fill out like a lot of application forms with essays, and you basically turn your whole life over to the ABC people, because what happens is they vet you thoroughly before you go on the show. Like the sharks actually
Interesting.
have never know anything about you besides your name when you walk out onto the stage. But they're lawyers and they're financial people, and you have to make videos and you go through like a whole bunch of levels of producers. So it's a
Wow.
crazy long process. That said, I was so happy to get on. It was really, really thrilling because it's one of my favorite shows too.
Right.
And before it was a little rough, so I actually filmed it. We were on air in February of 2021, almost a year ago, but I
Wow.
filmed it in the middle of the pandemic in August 2020, and they created a bubble, kind of like they created for the NBA. They created one in Las Vegas where they brought the cast, crew, and they built the sets at the Venetian Hotel in Las Vegas. And so we all flew out to Las Vegas, but it was very weird because we had to quarantine for 10 days in our hotel room with
Wow.
repeated tests for COVID before. And so actually, I got to Las Vegas, I was whisked into my hotel room, and then I didn't see another person for 10 days until they let me out to go
Oh
to the set.
my God. No way.
It was crazy.
You were like
And
Shark Tank jail.
the hardest part was they make you do a final run through. So I don't know if you saw my episode, but I play with my food a little bit where I do a little throwing of things, like all the things that are not in our products. So I throw some eggs, and at the very beginning, before the shark starts asking me questions, and I throw some butter over my shoulder. Anyway, I had to do a final run through for the producers in my hotel room, throwing all of those things. And they warned me, so I had to. They were there as an iPad, so I had to put up tarps all over the hotel room and then do it for this iPad. It was bizarre. But anyway, when I finally got on set, and you really do walk down that corridor that they show
Yeah.
you on TV, and there's a cameraman walking
My heart's
backwards in
racing
front
just
of
thinking
you,
about it.
and the doors open up and the sharks are right there in front of you. It was so thrilling. And honestly, they were really terrific. They all look really good in person too.
Nice.
The only thing that they didn't show on this season is, again, because of the pandemic, they had the sharks, instead of sitting next to each other, which they normally do, they were spread out into this enormous semicircle, maybe,
Oh.
I don't know, like 25 feet from Mark Cuban to Damon. I went in front of all the regular sharks except for Robert. But in any case, and so what they didn't show anybody doing, which I thought was hysterical, is, it's like a free for all. They're asking questions, they're shouting over each other, and you're in front of them for about an hour. And
Wow.
yeah, it's a long thing, and it couldn't go longer even. And so Mark would ask a question, and then Lori would ask a question, and then Barbara would ask a question, and then Damon.
God.
And my head was like swiveling. I couldn't keep everybody in my line of vision. So I think they cut out the parts where all the entrepreneurs are like,
Swiveling
look
back
at that.
and
But anyway, it was great. So long story short, I didn't get a deal. They loved the products, and luckily I have a clip of that. I didn't get a deal, but the sales. Another brand that had been on told me to sit there when they aired the episode and watch with my laptop open and look at Amazon where we can see sales in real time. And literally from the moment I walked out on the stage, when they're showing it in February, and I opened my mouth, ding, 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 ding,
oh
ding,
my
ding,
God,
ding,
that's
ding. It
amazing.
was crazy. And it really continued for a really, really, really long time, like that whole month. And then they reran it in March, and it got another bump, and then it leveled off, but it leveled off at a point that was much higher than previous to Shark Tank.
Oh, that's so good.
Thrilled that I did it. It was great.
I love that. I just love hearing the inside story on all of it too, and it's such a cool experience. And I tell my husband that Shark Tank is like my personal QVC because I just love the entrepreneurs so much and I love hearing the stories and they do such a good job of like all of it. And so I have my phone up and I just like Christmas shop and I just like buy
Oh,
things for us. I
great.
just love it. So I've always been hopeful that even if they don't get a deal, if you don't get a deal, that when you walk away, the exposure and all of it still helps the
Yeah, I mean,
brand,
I
I
don't
hope.
think. I think that's the truth. What I found was that the viewers, if they are interested in your product, they don't really care whether you got a deal. Often it's
No.
for the sharks actually thought that I had bootstrapped too much. I had put in too much of my own money. And so
Oh.
that's the reason, which was a little weird. But I really think the real reason was that Mark Cuban already has a vegan cookie company in his portfolio. And he kind of
Oh.
came out like asking me like not so nice questions. He was fine. He was fine. Anyway, I think that was really, I won't know for sure ever, but in any case, the viewers don't care,
No,
and
at all.
it was wonderful. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience, and I enjoyed every second of it. So I'm very glad I did. And now you'll know that people work really hard to get on that show. So those
Yes.
entrepreneurs that are up there will, that they're really passionate about what they're doing.
Right? I just love it all. And thank you for sharing that. As you're moving on like into the new year and you're like at this higher plateau than you were before the show, all of the things. Like what's next for Rule Breaker? Like what are you hoping for 2022? All of the things. How can listeners support you?
Thank you. Well, a
Yeah.
couple of ways. Well, we are 2021 was actually a great year for us despite the pandemic. Our sales are up. We're expanding into new stores. One of the things that we're in a lot of supermarkets as well as online, like Kroger and Wegmans and Stop and Shop and Jewel. One of the things that just happened that we're most proud of is that we just started shipping to the military. The military is going to have our snacks in their commissary.
Oh,
So that
that's
is really,
amazing.
really exciting. And
Congratulations.
thank you. So all that kind of, and of course the vending channel is really important to us as well, and micro markets, and we're trying to expand, and it's working. We're also, I can put a plug in for this. We are currently fundraising, doing something called equity crowdfunding on
Okay.
republic.co. And what that is it's kind of like Kickstarter on steroids. You can actually own a little bit of Rule Breaker as
How
like a
cool.
little piece of Rule Breaker and benefit as we grow and eventually exit, hopefully, and get sold. And you also get really good perks, like really delicious snacks and some fun swag as well. So
Oh, I
that's
love
on
that.
republic.co. Thank you. So and that campaign will be going on for another few months until May 1st. So so we're doing that, and yes, we're just trying to grow the company and maintain our integrity. We have a new flavor coming out in a in a month called Strawberry Shortcake Bites, which we're really
Oh.
excited about,
Ooh.
and a couple of other flavors coming out after that. So got a lot of plans this year.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Nothing But Good podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's show, and if you did, we'd be so grateful if you could leave a review and share this episode with your friends. Before you go, make sure you're subscribed so that you are always the first to know when a new episode is released. And don't forget to follow @OGoodieBox on Instagram so you can get an even deeper look into how we decide which products get placed in our snack boxes. Last but not least, visit ogoodiebox.com and make sure you use promo code PODCAST for 15% off your first box. Links to everything are in today's show notes. Until next time, happy snacking.